All right, Shadi. I'm here with Shadi Bakour, who's the CEO and founder of a multi-nine-figure water brand. Bro, the first question I have to ask is like, why water? Out of all things, why something that is free? Why something that there's already so many competitors? Like, how do you choose to get into this industry?
Yeah. I think one of the beautiful things about being a young entrepreneur is being like what people call naive, because like the seasoned entrepreneurs, the seasoned business people are trying to like overanalyze everything and find something that's like so unique, so special, so like non-competitive and all of the things. But for us, it was just like so obvious that water is one of the most successful consumer packaged goods, one of the most successful consumer products in the history of mankind. And like the way that water has been innovated, there's a better way to do it. And so once we saw that, we're like, let's just go for it. And like our closest friends, family, people around us were like, this is stupid. This is competitive, like way too competitive. Like gave us all the reasons why it won't work. And here we are.
Well, it's water. Everybody needs it, and
Yeah.
I'm sure nobody turns you down when you offer them a free bottle. And it's a really nice bottle, by the way. Put it right here in the front so you guys could see it. But can you take us back to like the early days? So you started this 10 years ago, about, right?
Yeah, about 10 years ago.
Where did the first idea come from? How did you did you read an article online? Did you think like this bottle sucks? I could do way better.
We were literally sitting in a parking lot of a CVS, like talking about what next big idea we were going to do.
You're 22, by the way, right?
22 years old. Yeah. Just we went into the store, saw the shelf, saw the water aisle. We started just talking, brainstorming. I mean, we went through so many different ideas, but we wanted something that was simple, scalable, and that had some sort of an impact tied to it. And like you said, everyone drinks water, man.
Nice. And so you were in the car with your two co-founders, right?
Yep.
So
in the bed of the pickup truck.
So this is a question I like to ask is like, it sounds like some entrepreneurs, they have the idea and then they go out looking for their partners. It sounds like you already knew who your team was.
Yeah.
You're like, I know we can build something successful together. You're good at this. I'm good at this. We just need to find the product. That's what it sounds like, right?
It was just like, hey, let's start something. And it was like the group of people that were willing to do like anything, just like slave until this works.
That's what it takes.
And like we were actually excited to do that. It's kind of like sadistic in a way. It was like let's like work 7 days a week, like 12, 14, 16 hours. Like we don't want to sleep. We just want to like crush it, be able to support our families and just create success and create wealth.
And I'm sure that was fun though, right? Like a lot of people, that might sound like it sucks to a lot of people,
right?
Working on the weekends, right. Not 9 to 5, working from like 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
right?
Almost. But it's fun, especially in the early days. Wouldn't you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, it's been fun the entire time. Not to say that it hasn't been really stressful, but also there's like high highs and low lows, like, and that's kind of what makes life interesting, honestly. Like, I don't know, maybe that's just me and my crazy brain, but just living like the normal lifestyle just wasn't for me. I was just willing to risk it all, but knowing in the back of my mind that I started with nothing, and if I go back to nothing, if I fail, and we can talk about failure, but if I fail and we go back to zero, I'm still going to be the happiest guy in the world.
That's what I think a lot of people don't understand is, and they fear that they're going to work on something for a long period of time and then it's not going to work out. And they're going to look at that as like, wow, I just wasted a couple years of my life because I didn't get a big exit, or it didn't become successful, or it never even took off the ground. But the reality is like, you're much further along now, right? If you, even if Path, and now it's extremely successful and it's growing, but even if it did fail after a couple years, you're not back at zero. You now have all that new experience, all those new connections. It was fun. Like you're so much better off to go start the next thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I think a lot of people need to understand about entrepreneurship is like failure is good. It's part of the process.
Yeah. I always call it a mistake, not a failure. So it's like, if you're in a movie shoot, right, it's like take one, action, take two. And if you miss the take, then you just do another take and you just keep doing it till you get it right. Right. So if it's this business or another business, or if you pivot or whatever it is, it's just like having that long-term mindset of like, it's not like how rich am I going to be in a year, 3 years, even 5 years. It's like, how rich am I going to be in 35 years, And it's just like, it's like you said, like you're building muscle by just consistently going out there, learning, trying stuff out. I mean, this is not my first business. This is not my first venture, not my first startup. And in the past, like all of those things that we learned along the way, I applied once we went to Path.
What number was this?
I'd say it's like number 4 of like a real venture, maybe number 5 or 6 of like just ideas that, we played around with.
That's valuable. And I think a lot of people think that their first one is supposed to be like the big hitter. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think I'm on my, sure, not all of them are like legit full businesses, but I'm on probably like number 6 or 7 right now of like little side hustles here and there, starting something, failure. Okay, next, you learn a little more, start it.
I was lawn mowing, like those types of things.
What are those early, what were those early ones like? Lemonade stands, everything.
Yeah, it was, one was like app development, which I had to teach myself app development, just like watching a million YouTube videos. One of them was like a talent website to like help scouts and recruiters. It was like learn like a little bit of web development and like learn to put together a business plan, did some pitch competitions. One of them was hardware. So it was this like heated and cooling Bluetooth technology. So I learned a lot there. My business license was revoked, like all of the things, credit cards maxed out.
At 22, or this is way before?
That was the one right before this one. And so, but everything happens for a reason. Like we spent so much time working on developing a product. Like we spent 1.5 years every day developing this product and launched it on Kickstarter. We were doing okay. And then ultimately, for various reasons that I won't go into, we decided to move away from it. And we were able to kind of do so in a very graceful manner. But like, what we realized is that we had spent so much time working on the product that we forgot about sales, marketing, fundraising, operations, like everything else that it takes to make a business. And so that was one big learning, was like, that's why we went from something so complex, such a complex product, to such a simple, quote unquote, simple product, like, but didn't turn out to be as simple as we thought it would be, but still.
For sure. But it's interesting because in a way, like once you've created the product, like I know you told me you've done like hundreds of collabs, but in general, the product stays about the same and you need to go crazy on the sales and the branding and the marketing, right?
Yeah.
So in the early days, once you first created this company, what were those early days like? What's the process there for anyone who's like just starting a business for the first time?
I mean, we went on one of those websites. I think it was like LegalZoom or like InkFile, or there's a bunch of them, right? Where you can just like file your business for a few $100. So that's like the first thing. But even before we did that, we're like, okay, let's figure out the idea, number one. Just brainstorm, figure out an idea, go for it. Like once it feels right, sounds right, go for it and start like really researching it to see if this is an actual idea that could work. Right.
Yeah, and just because you think it's a good idea doesn't mean it actually is a good idea.
You want to do a little bit more research, see what the market's like, see what the consumer. So we just went online, looked up business plan template and started filling it out, and started making a business plan. And that just created a lot of this like market research. Like we were just looking around trying to understand what this concept really meant, if it was viable in the market, how much does a metal bottle actually cost to produce. So we went on like Alibaba and like started calling up manufacturers all over the world and just asking a bunch of questions. I mean, the first prototype looked like a propane tank. Like it was like, it was funny.
The first prototype should look like shit. Some people wait way too long.
Yeah. And like, we even went out and talked to someone to fill the bottles up with water. And they ended up kind of stealing our idea. But they're not around anymore. So that,
Yeah.
it's like the idea is only like 1% of the actual, like the execution is everything. You can have a million good ideas or a million bad. It doesn't matter. Like ultimately, if you're just tenacious and like you persevere and you have a lot of grit, then you're gonna figure it out one way or another. So yeah. We just believed in it. There was an aha moment. Like 3 weeks in, we're doing market research, and I read that San Francisco, as a city, banned the sale of plastic bottled water on public property. So I was like, all right, there's something here. There's a trend, because a lot of trends come out of San Francisco, and plastic bags, the same thing, plastic straws. Like we saw that trend very early on, and so lo and behold, 5 years later, San Francisco International Airport banned single-use plastic bottles, and we went in there and we couldn't get through security to talk to the retailers, so we would literally book a flight on Expedia with 24-hour free cancellation, go through security, cancel the flight, and go talk to all the retailers, all the distributors. And we replaced about 4.1 million bottles going through one of the largest international hubs in the world.
Dude, I fucking love that. Those are the stories that are so fun to talk about, because that's what entrepreneurship is. It's like really getting into it like that. So dude, that's fucking sick. And I could tell like you were smiling when you were talking about that too, because it's a good memory.
Yeah.
But you said that was about year 5, right?
Yeah.
In the early days, how do you sell a product like that? Like, what do you do? Do you just have a car full of them and you go to, gas station to gas station or venue to venue saying, hey, do you want to buy these? Or how does it work?
Yeah. I mean, like, so I think there's that mindset of, when you're starting out a business, like you're reading the news of this company raised $50 million from this venture fund and Sequoia Capital and this and that. And you're like, oh, I could do that. Right. But it took us, 8 years to actually get a venture capital firm to invest in us. So up to that point, we had to do what we had to do to survive. But we didn't go the traditional route, and it kind of makes sense. Like if you're a young entrepreneur just starting out, like getting someone to believe in you early on, you're more likely to probably get someone that's just like has a lot of money, that's willing to take a risk and put in, X amount of dollars, versus like a professional venture capital fund that's their job. And
if they don't bring a return, it's their ass on the line.
Exactly. So it's like they're not managing their own money, they're actually managing someone else's money. So they actually have a boss in some sense of it, So like all of that frothy stuff that people think is real, it does exist. People do raise from venture capital funds, but you walk around like a trade show of all these different companies, and like it might be the big flashy booth of this company that's growing, that's all doing all these things, is like it's cool and it's flashy and it's all of that. But it actually might be like the booth right next door that's tiny, that's just staying super humble and super hungry and just like taking things one day at a time, that's actually crushing it way more than that big flashy company that's trying to show off and trying to make a lot of noise. So things are not always what they seem, and that's something that I've learned throughout this journey.
Oh yeah, no doubt. What in those early days when it was like, just grinding away, trying to sell your first couple sets of products, what was the biggest, I know I talked about the gym recently, but what was the biggest bottleneck in the early years where like once you figured this one thing out, it just allowed you to scale like crazy?
Yeah.
Were there any aha moments in the first couple of years that just were like, this changed everything, and it was right next to us? I don't know how it took us so long.
Yeah, there's a few things. I would say one of the big things for me on a personal level was breaking through my own limiting beliefs, because we were trying to raise money. We had no money of our own. So we had to go get OPM, right? Other people's money.
At what point was this? What year?
I mean, from day one, like we had to go find money because we had no money. I was driving Uber and working in an Italian restaurant, like we made $0 for the first 4 years.
You and Uber was probably just getting started back then, right? So you were probably
Yeah.
in the early days.
Yeah, we were
Wow, dude,
crushing
hell
it
yeah.
on Uber.
Let's go.
Yeah. Good times, good times. But yeah, so those early days, like we had to like I've learned a lot. One thing I've become like pretty good at is fundraising, I would say, and learning the investor psychology, investor mentality, and how to get other people's money. And the funny thing is, like, even the richest people in the world they'll use some of their own money, but they really don't use their own money. They use other people's money because it's less risky and they can still get a really good return out of it, right? Because I would say the highest paying form of equity is sweat equity. So like the people that are doing it, making it happen are the ones that are ultimately going to get paid. And money is just a commodity. Like there's money everywhere. There's trillions and trillions of dollars out there in the world that you can access. It's just figuring out how to access it and how to get to it. So I would say early on, the big limiting belief that I had to break through was that I was too young. And I just thought like we went like first 3 years like raising, a very little amount of money relative to what we've raised now. And I was just kind of down in the dumps, like, why is this not happening? And it was actually my co-founder that was like, F this, like, he just got like pissed off one day and he's like, we just have to find it, like we just have to do it. And like we hit up this guy that was at a lawyer. Like they say your first investors are like friends, family, and fools. And he was a fool. But he's very happy about it now. You know what I mean? But he's like what people would consider a fool. And yeah, so like we just went through that experience of like I went through that experience of like, okay, I'm not too young. Like there's no such thing as being too young. It's just like being on this journey and figuring it out along the way. But that was something that even like probably other people also kind of projected that onto me. It was like, man, you guys are too young. Like, go get experience in the real world and then come back and do it. So like literally once I broke through that mental limiting belief, within 2 months, we raised our first $1 million.
Nice.
Yeah.
And how old were you at that point?
At that point I was probably 24, 25.
Nice. Congrats, man.
Yeah.
That's exciting too. I think being young can be a disadvantage, but it can also be an advantage because I think people want to help guys that are young, especially if they're enthusiastic and they have grit and they have that drive. Especially these days, I think a lot of young people out there have that same kind of belief today. If they're watching this or listening to this, like they're already interested in entrepreneurship, they're already interested in starting a business, but maybe they think like, oh, maybe I'll do it a couple years into my 9 to 5. I'll save up some money and then I'll go do it. You've just explained you don't need to really save up that much money. It might be nice to have a little safety net, but at the end of the day, like if you truly do believe in whatever it is you're building, why not just go tell other people about it and see if they'll be interested? Yeah. And you'll be like, oh, well, I don't want to lose anybody else's money. Like if you really believe in what you're building that much, then you won't lose anybody else's money. Yeah. Or that's how you have to look at it, right?
Exactly. Actually, on the other side of it is like you're giving them an opportunity.
Yes.
Because who's willing to literally sacrifice their entire life to work like all the time? It's kind of very few people if you look at everybody in the world, right? People want to enjoy their lives. They want to go surfing. They want to go to the club on a Friday night. They want to have fun with their friends, all those things. So like, yeah.
I really like how you said that there. I'm giving you an up. So yeah, I'm going to give up my early young years. I'm going to give up a couple years of my young youthful life to make you more money. I think when you think of it that way, it probably allows you to go into those meetings and really just dominate, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What was the rejection like in the early days? How many no's did you get before you got the first yes? Or what was the ratio like, if you remember?
I would say at the very beginning, it probably took us like 100 or 200 no's to get the first yes. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And that's in That's
and we
gotta
got
be
lucky to get that yes.
yeah,
you
that's gotta
know?
be disheartening, right? Or was it was
Yeah.
it just like we're just gonna keep doing it until we get it?
Uh, it's you always have like doubt creeps in at some points, and it gets scary, and you're like, is this gonna happen? Like, what's wrong? But like that is like what makes you better, right? Is like that discomfort, like no pressure, no diamonds, right? You need that pressure to like be able to. We also need that grittiness to be able to stay in it and not give up. But like that pressure of, what do I need to fix? Like, what am I doing wrong?
Mhm.
I'm gonna go read 3 books, listen to a bunch of podcasts, listen to some YouTube, like all the things that I can do that's in my control to get better and like to reform my strategy
Mhm.
and just come back and continue to kind of hit it.
Do you have any idea like roughly how many meetings you've taken to date?
Oh
You
my
said
God.
you said you've been raising nonstop since the beginning, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, I would say like I've probably pitched over 10,000 investors.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
I thought you were gonna say like 500 to 1,000, but that's insane.
Oh,
Okay,
no.
so you've been doing this for almost a decade. You've raised over $100 million plus. I'm about to go do it for the first time ever.
Yeah.
What if I was paying you to coach me,
Yeah.
or like there's gonna be a lot of people
Yeah.
listening that are like, tell me, what advice would you give? Are there any tips and tricks? Is there anything that you were doing that later on you realized like that I should have completely skipped over that? Do you have any really good advice for us young guys?
Yeah. I would say just like what you were saying is like people want to invest in people that they know are maniacs. Like you have to show that like your eyes are about to pop out of your head. That's how badly you want it. And like tell them like I am working 7 days a week, all day, every day. You can call me morning, night. Like I'll call you every single morning for the next 3 months. And after that 3 months, you give me a check. Like be willing to do literally anything to convince that person that you are worth investing in. Not because you have a great business, but because they're investing in you,
Yes.
right? Like, and they're investing in your future. And look, most of the people that are going to invest, 99.9% of the people that are going to invest are not going to go hungry, or they're not going to like miss anything really by writing you a check. Like especially like the wealthier people, but even like people that are making like a decent salary day to day that want to put in a small check, like a small check is not going to really shift their life in one way or another. Now, if you 10x their investment or 20x it, then you will actually change their life in a very positive way. So again, you're giving them an opportunity. And so I would say just you got to show people how insane you are and like how willing to work you are. Like don't be like humble about it, or don't be like shy about it. Like that's what people want to see, is that hunger, because again, it's more rare, I think, than social
Good
media
idea
makes
itself.
it. Yeah, and like then like social media makes it look like everyone's like hustle, 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 but like who's actually sitting there all day, every day? Like I think a lot of it is just for show. Like people are not really practicing what they preach.
Hmm.
And if you can prove to people that you are that, and that you're gonna stick with it, and that if they don't invest, someone else is gonna invest, because you're gonna find that person like at all costs. So again, you're giving them an opportunity. So
How do you balance that aspect in the actual pitch itself when trying to stay reasonably humble, saying like, we would love to have your money, but also saying like, listen, like, number one, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make it happen, whether or not you're involved. Number two, like somebody's going to win big, right? But also staying, we would love to have you involved. How do you balance those two things?
yeah, I don't actually know if there's a balance to it. I would say like
Is there one way you should lean?
yeah, you should lean towards like I'm gonna make you a lot of money, not in a cocky way,
Yeah.
but in the way that like I am literally going to break through a brick wall to make this happen. Like nothing is going to stop me. And I'm like, but you have to be willing to actually back it up with work. Like if you're gonna just like work on it a few hours a day and like, you know, hope that it works out, and well, then you go into that meeting and you're lying essentially.
Yeah.
Eventually it's gonna catch up to you.
Mhm.
Because like one way or another, like if you're putting in that much work, then it compounds over time, over a long period of time. Imagine like, you know, putting in that work every single day for years and years and years and years, and you're learning every day, you're making new connections every day, like you know, the 1% every day, right? Like compounds over time.
Reminds me of that one clip from you ever seen that movie, The Pursuit of Happiness, with Will Smith?
I love that movie.
Where he's in the meeting and he's like, I might not know the answer, but I will find the answer.
Yeah.
And they believed in him. They gave him the shot.
Exactly.
Hell yeah, man. Well, that's honestly really helpful. It's some of the best advice I've ever gotten. And so I'm going into this excited, and yeah, I might hit you up and pester you for some more advice later down the line. So I appreciate it.
I got a lot more tips for you.
What about, so let's talk about the brand itself a little more.
Yeah.
How do you differentiate a product like this, a product that anyone can get anywhere? You don't even have to pay for it. Like, what was your strategy with that, and how has that changed over time?
Yeah, well, I think like, well, first of all, what Path is the first ever bottled water in a reusable, recyclable aluminum bottle instead of single-use plastic, right? So we saw an opportunity in an industry that's been like plagued with plastic to make that change. And so at the beginning, it was just like, hey, let's just put water in a metal bottle. Like that should be easy enough, right? And then it's way more complicated than we thought because everything's been standardized for plastic. Mm-hmm. So to do something in aluminum that's, you know, when bottles are running on a machine, on a manufacturing line at 800 bottles per minute, it's you know, any little modification in the product will lead to a drastic change in the tooling and the change parts and the manufacturing kind of processes behind it. So yeah, I went off. What was your question?
So okay, well that makes sense though. So you're an industry disruptor.
Yeah.
And obviously you mentioned you worked for Uber a little bit at the beginning. So were they.
Yeah.
Did you run into any problems with some other like big competitors, plastic bottles specifically, where maybe they were like, oh, we don't like that this guy is doing this? Or was
Not
it
really, because they thought like we weren't going to do it.
Okay.
You know, they thought this was a horrible idea because we're selling water in a reusable bottle. It, for anyone that's been in the industry, that's like a veteran of the industry, they think it's a horrible idea because
that decreases sales.
Yes, we're the water company that doesn't want to sell you any more water. You know, it doesn't make sense. It's completely counterintuitive. It's completely contrarian. It's completely against the grain. Even till this day, people ask me that question, like, how are you guys going to sell more water if it's in a reusable bottle? You just keep it forever. And, you know, but we have a lot of answers for that. But ultimately, it's like, we wanted to be an authentic brand that was solving a problem, not just trying to ride a trend and make a bunch of money off of it. And we think that consumers can see through all the BS of all these companies that are, you know, trying to ride this wave of sustainability, but they're not really, you know, acting like it. And so the highest form of sustainability is reusability. That's what we always said. And that's how we build a loyal brand following, is because people know that, you know, it's like Patagonia. Like you walk into a Patagonia store, you know that their clothes are sustainable. You know, just
they're good quality. They last a long time.
Absolutely.
Expensive though.
Expensive, but like people are willing to pay more because they have that brand trust in Patagonia. They don't even need to go on their website and look stuff up to confirm anymore because they already know that Patagonia as an organization, that's what they care about. And we wanted to do the same thing for the entire beverage industry.
Nice. And I know you mentioned we were just at the gym together for everyone listening. But this is an industry that takes a long time to see the results in, right?
Yeah.
You know, you've been in business 10 years now.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about profitability, like how long it takes to get there, what you should, you know, I think a lot of people don't really understand that at the beginning, and they think that a business must be profitable right away in order for it to be successful, but that's just not the case.
Yeah. Well, there's this like balancing act, I would say, between growth and profitability, right? And some people will say like you want to be as profitable as soon as possible, and some people would say like you want to grow as much as possible. So those are both sides of the spectrum. And in order to grow faster, you need to inject capital, right? There's basically two types of capital. There's financial capital, money, and then there's human capital, so people. So money and people, the more that you put into a business, technically, the faster it should grow. And so like basically if the value of your company is growing fast enough, then you can just keep injecting more and more money and more people into the business and growing it at a much faster rate, because it's going to have a return for your investors, but it's not going to be profitable during that time.
Yeah.
So there's like no right or wrong way to go in business. It's just like whatever makes sense for the entrepreneur and however they see it fit. But in the beverage industry, something that I learned very like 5 years into it is how expensive of an industry it is and how big you have to get in order to be profitable. And what I found out much later is that you have to be literally in the hundreds of millions to really be a profitable beverage business. For most of the beverage businesses out there, there are, certain stories of businesses that have done it earlier, but for the large majority, I would say 98% of the businesses that I've seen do not hit profitability from a beverage standpoint until they're well beyond 100 million in revenue. And so it's one of those specific industries. I think like other industries, you can get profitable way earlier.
Yeah.
Which is nice because you can save more of your equity. You can grow based on your profits. Like there are benefits to being profitable and having like a higher margin. But it took me 5 years to look up on Google worst margin industries. And on that list, like beverage is number 3 on that list. But it's also one of the most lucrative businesses, because like if you look at like Jay-Z or Kobe Bryant or any of these guys, like Jay-Z made 2/3 of his first $1 billion off of beverages and like champagne and beverages. Kobe turned $6 million with Body Armor into $250 million.
Prime Logan Paul right now.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's a very big, it's big ideas. It's big industry, right? So you have to get it to a certain scale, but it can be very, very rewarding for those that can get it to that scale.
Interesting. Well, let me ask you a question about like a problem I'm dealing with right now.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your take. So right now we're trying to figure out the best way to scale for us.
Yeah.
If I have to choose between, okay, let's say I can spend $1,000 a day on ads and I can have a 3x ROAS, right? And let's say my margins are about $1 of that, like a third, right? If I can be, that's pretty profitable, right? 33%, I spend $1, I spend $1, I get 3 back. One of those goes to ads, one of those goes to COGS and fulfillment, and then one is profit. If I can do that, and I can be decently profitable and grow slowly, is that the best way to scale my business? Or if I can spend, $5,000 a day, but only be getting like let's say like a 10% profit margin, should I be focusing on that and going more for like growth, brand awareness, and just trying to get the product out there in front of as many eyes as possible? What do you think?
Yeah. I think that, again, there's no right or wrong answer in business. So like take whatever I say with a grain of salt. But I would say like, if you find the formula that's profitable, even if it's a small profit that you're making, I would put more money behind it, because with ad spend, like there's a certain point where it just declines and you can't make money on it anymore.
Yeah.
I would like try to see like what that point is and try to like play around with it. Like marketing is just testing, right? It's like you're trying all these small things out, you find something that works, and then boom, you just put all the firepower behind it. And so that would be my opinion, would be like put more firepower behind it if you find something that, but like also there's so many things to consider. Like, all the flashy businesses that you see like in the news that are, $100 million and all these big numbers behind it. It's like, okay, but once you look under the hood, how is that business? Like, you could have a business that's doing $50 million in sales and making $1 million. And then you could have a business that's doing 10 million in sales, but making $5 million. Which one would you rather be? Right. And so you're walking away with way more money with the $5 million. You have less overhead. You have less employees. It's a smaller business, but some people just want to shoot for the moon. I'm probably one of those people that's like, I might take the $50 million.
Yeah, no, I totally get you, man. I mean, I think, especially if you're going for like a massive exit one day, or maybe it's a different sort of motivation. Maybe you want your product in every household in America. And how profitable you are doesn't really matter. Like, maybe that's your goal behind it. So yeah, that's something I'm trying to figure out right now.
You got to do some soul searching, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I want the brand to be profitable, and we are decently profitable right now, but I want everybody wearing our stuff.
Yeah.
And I just want it to be known as like that fucking sick brand. That every guy like me who's like ambitious but also passionate about fitness wants to wear.
Yeah.
So we're trying to find the balance right now, but that is helpful.
Yeah. I mean, I've met the people, for example, like one of the biggest guys in the music industry is one of our investors, and he was making he got to the point where he was making like $10,000 a month on his business. And he's like, I could just live off of this like for the rest of my life, or I could reinvest it all back into the business. And he decided to reinvest it back into the business, and now it's worth hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. But he had like Google Ventures and all of these big like venture capital firms literally begging him to invest, and he did not give away any equity. And for him, it's more about his legacy. So he was willing to grow it slowly over a longer period of time, and just like take the profits, reinvest them back into the business and grow it, rather than letting other people into his business where he loses some sort of control maybe, or some, ownership in the business, and has to give that away to someone else, or bring in partners, right? Where other people have opinions, and now you have to like at least like take their phone calls and like listen to them, even if they have a smaller part of the business, right? So there are pros and cons. On the other side of it, like, we've raised so much money, and the benefit of that is like we've met so many amazing people that now if I make them money, I can call them on the next 5 ideas and be like, hey, invest, and like they'll write a check tomorrow, right? Because I already made them a lot of money. I could just call them up and say like, hey, remember how much money I made you? Like, invest in my next
$1
idea.
billion idea. Yeah. I think that in raising is a skill too, and that's one of the reasons that I really am excited. Not even necessarily because like we talked about this, we don't really need the money, but it's a skill, and I want to get good at this now. As opposed to later in life when I need a lot more, or maybe in general when I do need it, So I think that's my mindset right now. But that brings up a good question. Can you break us down like how you go about communicating with all your investors right now? Are you sending monthly newsletters to them, quarterly reports? Like how do you go about, keeping in contact with everyone?
Yeah. I mean, we have hundreds and hundreds of investors. So if I took a call with each one of them every quarter, I would literally do nothing else, right?
Yeah.
Like there would be no time. So there's a balancing act. I mean, I know like one guy who built his business. It's a multi-billion-dollar business. At their peak, they're like at 60 billion market cap, and they went public and all this stuff. And he doesn't send out any investor updates. It shocked me when I heard that.
He's just like, you guys invested in me for a reason. Let me do my job.
Yeah, he's like, you want in? Like, I'm not gonna send you an investor updates. That one shocked me.
That's
because at first I felt bad because like, even to write an investor update takes a lot of time. Like there are people that'll just like jot it down on an email, which is cool too. Everyone has their own style. But for me, like, if I'm going to send something to an investor as an update, like, I want it to be nice. I want it to, like, look good. I want it, like, graphically, aesthetically, like, all the things, right? So I spend time on it. And so we send out an update, like, every 6 months, which is not, like, a lot of investors will be like, hey, like, I haven't gotten an update from you. And I'm like, yeah, we send them out every 2 quarters. Like, it'll come out, you know? And there's nothing that they can do about that. At the end of the day, like, even if I told them, like, we don't send out investor updates, like, what are they going to do? They're going to sue you for not sending you an investor update? Like, there's nothing that they
Yeah,
can
but
do.
I guess you don't want them running around telling their friends, like, yeah, these guys don't communicate properly, you know?
Yeah,
so.
you want them to be excited. Like, the reason I do it is, like, you want them to be excited. You want them to be invested emotionally, not just financially, right? Like, if you want them for more than just their money, which is a lot of our investors, you want them to stay updated. You want them to feel like they're in the loop. You know, you want them to be excited about the growth, and you want them to, like, bring you, you know, it's a way to also, like, it works both ways, right?
Yeah.
It's like you're giving them information, but they're also, you have the potential for them to, like, call you and say, like, hey, I have this opportunity for
Yes.
you, or this and that, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, in a way, like, all of these investors that have come in, they're kind of like an army of people that are out there, like, championing our brand on a day-to-day basis. And even if they're like a really small investor, it doesn't matter. Like, if someone puts in $1 or $1 million or $30 million, like, I look at it as, like, every dollar that someone puts in is really, like, I don't take it lightly.
Yeah, a good friend of mine who's also kind of a mentor figure for me. He has like a whole web that he showed me that shows every dollar that's come into his company and then all the connections that have come from it. And there's one that stood out. There was one like little it was the smallest check he ever got. It was $5,000.
Yeah.
But there was a line going right to it for another check for $2 million.
Yeah.
So like that guy had a friend, or I don't know what their relationship was, but that guy had a friend or something that then brought the biggest check the company had received.
Totally.
So yeah, maybe it's like a partnership. Maybe it's like, you know, you're talking about a new product line you're coming out with, and somebody's like, wait, I have this big athlete that actually would love to get involved. So
yeah, exactly. And, like, there are some investors that we keep in touch with monthly or even more or less, you know, so it just depends. Like, it really depends. But to all of our investors, we send them out biannually, so every
Nice.
2 quarters.
Cool. Well, let's talk about what it takes to be a CEO a little bit.
Yeah.
I always like to ask the guests, because most of them happen to be CEOs. They're the face of the company. They're the ones, you know, leading the charge. What do you think your superpower is, and what do you think is the most important part of your job?
I think my superpower is connecting people and being kind of like, if you think about an orchestrator at, like, a symphony, is like, I don't have to be good at playing any instrument. I just have to be good at, like, making them all flow together, you know? And so, kind of popping in, supporting people where I can, not only from a, like, business standpoint of, like, hey, can I get on a call with you for Whole Foods? It's like, also, like, where do I see you developing over the next few years? How can I make you, like, your best person? You know, like, how can I make, like, because people spend so much of their lives working that if you can make it like about more than just work, and this happens over time, like, early days of startup, like, you're just scraping, you know, and scrapping to just survive. So, like, you can't really focus on, like, you know, like,
Making sure someone's having fun.
yeah, like a pizza party on Friday.
Yeah.
You can do those little things, you know, but definitely as the business progresses, you, like, have more bandwidth to focus on the people. And I think for a CEO, that's, like, what's absolutely critical is, like, you don't need to know how to do the things in the business. You just need to know how to manage people and get them excited. So again, early days, it's like you have to know how to, you're the sales guy, you're the marketing person, you're the operations person, you're doing all those things. So you are kind of like those employees, right?
Yeah.
But eventually when you have a team under you that's, like, experienced, that's doing their thing, you, like, it becomes much less about what your knowledge is in the industry and more about what your knowledge is from, like, an emotional standpoint of, like, what makes people excited, what makes them tick, like,
EQ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So would you say it's always common that the CEO, at least the ones I've talked to, have a very high EQ. But yeah, that definitely does put it in good terms for sure. I think I think at the end of the day, you kind of also have to be like the team cheerleader too, right?
Yeah.
Like even when like shit is just not going well, like maybe like the
100%.
big investor you needed pulled out or something, you can't let everyone know that because they have to keep doing their job. So
Yeah, and they don't know everything, you know, that you're going through on a day-to-day basis. So if you were to like raise a red flag and be like, this major investor pulled out, then like people are gonna freak out because they don't really have the full story. They don't know who else you're talking to. They don't know like what is the alternative. They're like, am I gonna be out of a job? You know, all those things. Like, so
would you say it's thankless?
thankless.
Yeah. Like you're always expected to perform. And when you do, it's not like a big deal. It's not like a thank you, Shadi, or good job, Shadi. It's like it's expected. But when something goes wrong, you're hearing about it from everybody.
Yeah, I think like when things are going well, you have to put the appreciation on the team because like people need to be appreciated. That's like one of the most, I think, motivating things. Like you can either motivate through like fear or you can like do the carrot on the stick
Yeah.
type of motivation, right? And both work honestly, like in their own respect. But I think over the long term, the appreciation, the staying humble and hungry, the like staying like being willing to fight on the front lines with everyone and like still be, you know, like to work to do anything that it takes, you know, not just to like be like, oh, I'm the CEO and like you guys should do your job and I'll do my job. No, it's like I will literally sit with you all night and work on this with you until we figure it out. I think having that like humility can in the long run will serve you and will pay off.
Nice. Well, on that note, I also, when I was doing some research on you, you're a member of YPO, correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a lot of questions on that because I hear
Young
amazing
Presidents
things.
Organization.
Hell yeah, man. I think, so yeah, could you give us like a 30-second breakdown of what that is for anyone who's never, any of the young guys who've never heard of it before?
Yeah, it was actually one of the first two things that I wanted when I started as an entrepreneur. It's like was it's a little bit superficial, I guess, but like it's a good goal to set. I think it was like to be in YPO, number one, number two, to get Forbes 30 under 30. And like within a period of 3 months, I got both of them, which
Fuck
was
yeah.
nuts.
At what age?
28.
Nice, man. Congrats.
Yeah. Thank you. So, yeah, and like for Forbes 30 and 30, I applied 3 years in a row. I missed it the first year, missed it the second year, got it the third year. So again, not everything is as it seems, right? But Young Presidents Organization is a network of 30,000 CEOs all across the world. They control like $12 trillion in GDP. So it's about a third of the world's GDP. And a lot of people that are really successful business people are part of this network. And so, yeah, there's like regional chapters or state or local chapters. Like here in Austin, there's a YPO Austin, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just like a way for you to connect with other CEOs. The whole rule in the YPO is like if you call someone and tell them you're in YPO, like they should respond within 24 hours and like get a meeting. So it's a pretty powerful network if you know how to tap into it. Most people don't really know how to tap into it, honestly. But yeah, I went like all in when I got in. Like
Taking full advantage.
I took full advantage. Yeah,
I've heard that it's essentially just leaders helping leaders because once again, kind of going back a little bit, if you're ever going through some really tough shit, let's say it's your first time doing it, like you can't show it to your team. You can't ask your team for help because they don't really know either.
Yeah.
So it's like a great resource for you as the main one in charge, the top of the pyramid.
Totally.
To hear from other people who might be quite a ways ahead of you and say like, what would you do in this situation? Right.
Totally. Yeah.
Have there ever been any like massive mistakes in the business or points of turmoil where you just had no idea what to do and you contacted someone and they kind of really helped you through that?
Absolutely. So many times.
Can you talk about like maybe one of the ones that stands out, like an example?
Yeah, I mean like making like hiring and firing decisions, you know, can be really hard, especially if you're working with people that you're really invested in, or trying to find someone that, you know, that you need, like just thinking through how to go about these like human people things.
Yeah.
It's not just like cutthroat like business, like you're out, like, you like there is a human aspect to like what we do, because again, people are putting their lives into this. Even if you're working the 9 to 5, like you're spending 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, you know, helping this business succeed.
You're a dream.
Exactly. So, um, yeah, those types of things. I think like I've had help with fundraising. I've raised, a lot of money through the network, or just learned kind of tricks of the trade, like tips and tricks. Um, all types of stuff. But it's exactly like you said, there's like 95% of stuff that you can talk about with your friends, your family, your coworkers, your spouse, whatever. There's that 5% of stuff, like the fat tail, that you can't really talk about with anyone. And that's the whole point of YPO, is like it's supposed to be a fully confidential environment where you can talk about those things with people that don't like care if you succeed or not. They want to see you succeed, like they want to support you, but like it doesn't affect their lives whether you succeed or not. So they're kind of like an outside third party that has no interest other than helping to support you.
Nice. That's got to be extremely useful for sure. I can only imagine. I think that's kind of like my little social media sphere, right? That I'm in right now. But I
Yeah.
can totally see
Yeah.
how that's like just monumentally important for your business. So
Yeah.
okay, so what do you think enables you to be the best CEO? Do you have any sort of routine? Do you have like in general life principles that guide you, that allow you to be the sharpest, allow you to be the most calm and collected under pressure? I
Yeah.
think a lot of people have, balance is really important to them. Some people don't care about balance at all. How do you kind of lead your normal life at home in order to become the best leader at the workplace?
Yeah. I mean, I think there are a lot of like little routine things that I've learned over the years. I think like for me personally, meditation is important, but it's not just like the meditation of sitting and like watching your breath or visualizing or all those things. Like another big form of meditation for me is running. So I got into long distance running, like not to see how fast I could run, but to see like how, because it's just, there's like this clear mindedness when you're on a long run.
It's hard to be stressed when you're running.
Yeah. And I run slow, like over 10-minute miles, and I can run faster if I like when I'm like with a friend or something, but when I'm running by myself, I just like keep it exactly dialed into that place where I'm like not out of breath, but like almost starting to be out of breath. That's like my sweet spot that I found, where I get this like endorphin rush. My mind is so clear, and I just like it's a different, I don't know, it's a different level. I think exercise is super important. Just it gives you energy, vitality, and allows you to be a better leader. I've seen, people that just work themselves, to death, and don't care about their own personal health, but it's like, what's the point, kind of like, if you're just like running, trying to make a lot of money, and then like you die.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, like you didn't really live, like, I don't know. That's, for me, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So, exercise is, for me, is super important. I've always like been somewhat consistent, at least. If not, like there's been spurts where I've been really consistent, getting back into it now. But yeah, those are some of the main key things. And then just like always having a hunger to learn. And it doesn't just have to be about business, right? It's like you could learn about my whole thing is like I'm kind of a generalist. So what I believe is like if you learn about guitar, and then you learn about like running, and then you learn about business, and then you learn about emotions, and psychology, like one way or another, all of those things actually overlap.
Mm-hmm.
and you don't really realize how it overlaps until you actually do it, and then you experience life, and then you see how all of those things actually are related in like more ways than you would have ever imagined. So for me, like, there's a generalist and there's a specialist. Like, I consider myself a generalist, but I think in some ways, like, that gives a more well-rounded person when it comes to how we think about things, how we make decisions, and just how we live our lives.
Nice. Well said. And you brought up a good point there that I want to ask a question on. What is the ultimate end goal for you? Are you someone that are you dying to get to the view, or do you like the climb itself? Do you like both? What's the end goal with Path?
Yeah.
And then what's next after that?
I mean, I think that we are enjoying the journey, like
Nice.
really enjoying the journey. And I think if you don't enjoy the journey, then it's going to be like a miserable ride all the way up to the top. And then once you get to the top, you might not even realize that you like it. Like, I've met so many people that have worked so hard to make their business, to make a bunch of money, sold their business, and then they got depressed like immediately after, and like had to go like find themselves and like try to figure out like what all of this means for so long, for years. And so yeah, I mean, it goes back to like the whole thing is like, I could honestly be like living under a bridge and be happy. Like, I don't need much, I'm like I consider myself like a simple guy in some ways,
Yeah.
but obviously, we want the toys, we want the experiences, we want to do all the things. Like,
Curiosity leads you to want to experience a lot of things, for sure. I think that's another big part of being an entrepreneur, is just like that it's out there. I want to see what I can do.
Yeah, 100%. But there are also a lot of entrepreneurs that have like made millions, lost it all, made millions. Like, I don't know, the most one that I've seen is probably like 8, 9, 10 times.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I was just speaking to a guy literally driving on the way here that made his first $1 million when he was 23 years old. And then by the time he was like 24, he was like making like $1 million a month or something. Like, this guy was crushing it. And then he ended up going to prison because he made like some shady move, or he did something that compromised his integrity. Like,
Yeah.
At that age, like, it might seem like it's nothing, but then he lost his freedom for a couple years, and he's like, now he's like much older, and he just realized how much more important it is to protect your integrity over making that buck.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, just life is interesting that way.
Nice. Okay, well, this is a question that I like to finish off every interview with, and take as much time as you want, because it's meant to be challenging. It's meant to make you think a little bit. But what's one thing that you hold to be true that everybody else would almost certainly disagree with?
Whew. I mean, I don't know if there's anything that everyone would disagree with, right? But maybe the large majority of people in the world would disagree with like the idea of like being, I think, imbalanced, like, or that whole idea of balance. Like, I think that for me, life is not about balance. It's not about like, like all of the niceties and things like that. That I think like life is a matter of like integration. So it's like you bring in the things in your life that you want to be a part of your life. But what I find the most fulfilling for me is more on the obsession side of things.
Mm.
Like I think it feels good to me to just be obsessed with like doing something. Like in my first for several years, like I was living at home with my parents where, I didn't want to live at home with the parents, like coming out of college, you want to like live by yourself and, all the things. But it was also an amazing opportunity for me to not have to pay rent, right?
Yeah.
And have like food when I got home and stuff. But my family, my siblings and my parents literally told me that they're like, this is not your house. This is like a hotel. Like you literally come here, you go to the bathroom, you go to sleep, you wake up and you're gone, and they really didn't get it for many, many, many years. And now they see like, what we've built and they're proud of it. But I still don't know if like going back, if they would want me to have that level of obsession with what I do. But it's what is fulfilling to me, right? So I would say that's one thing that most people don't agree with that I do.
Yeah, and I think you have to be obsessed in order to, especially not only to be successful, but like we were talking about in the beginning, to show other people that like you are going to die on this sword because it's the only thing you care about, right? So definitely 100%.
Yeah.
Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. I learned a lot. I hope everybody listening and watching learned a lot. And this is probably the most beneficial conversation I've ever had, honestly, on raising.
What?
So thank you very much, man. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Awesome.
My pleasure.
Well, yeah, I'll link all your socials. So I keep telling Shadi that he needs to start his personal brand. And there's no like perfect way to do it. Like you just have to try lots of different things, as you know.
Yeah.
But you're gonna have to start over. It's just like starting it's a new business essentially in its own right. You got to hire people sometimes.
Exciting.
Yeah, it is very exciting. So hopefully if he starts posting some content, by the time this podcast comes out in a few weeks, I'm going to link all of his stuff, his Instagram and everything.
Cool.
But dude, thank you again for coming on. This was a pleasure.
Thank you.
Awesome.